welcome back to another video with Past Papers 101. I'm your teacher, Miss Edwards, and today we have the paper that most of you have been waiting for, the Integrated Science, May-June 2025. So this paper at the time of this recording was done last week, a few days ago. And so I'll be doing the review of the paper. If you are a student who is sitting the exam for the very first time, then this is where you should be to get the most recent paper available at this time. And also, if you're the student who just did this exam, then you're going to want some feedback as to how well you did. All right, hopefully the paper was easy for you. So let's look at this paper. Remember, this exam lasts for 2 hours and 30 minutes. All right. The first question asks, water is a unique substance because it exists in 3 states. Figure 1 shows the arrangement of water particles in the 3 states of matter: X, Y, and Z. The question asks us to identify the 3 states of matter labeled X, Y, and Z. X is solid, Y is liquid, and Z is gas. 3 marks. And I don't think I've ever seen a more easier question on any integrated science paper. That just goes to show CXC or CSEC, the examining body, can put just about anything on the paper. It says identify which one of the states of matter labeled X, Y, or Z best represents the arrangement of the particles in ice, and the answer there is X. Remember, X is a solid, and that's 1 mark. It says state the name of the gas that is formed when heat is applied to water. Another very easy mark. It's water vapor or steam. Don't think it can get any easier than this, guys. I really don't. So for those of you who went to the exam and this question puzzled you, maybe you did not study hard enough. Or maybe you just overlooked one of the most easiest topics in the paper, because that is grade 10, one of the first things that we look at, if not the very first thing in the syllabus. All right, it says the table below shows data collected from an experiment where heat is applied to ice. It says on the grid provided on page 7, plot a line graph of time against temperature. To represent the data in table 1, you must connect each plotted point and label each axis. And this graph question was worth 10 marks. And remember I said to you, always ensure that you label your axes and always make sure that you have a title, just because you will get marks for those even if your points are off. So look at the data, time against temperature, and you would have gotten familiar with this data from the exam. So let's look at how your graph should have looked. All right. This is how your graph should have looked. Let me zoom out a bit. Right? So here we have temperature should be on your y-axis, right? And you would get a mark for putting the word temperature there. And time would go on your x-axis. Now, hopefully the scale did not confuse you, because for this scale, they actually added some negative numbers on the y-axis. And hopefully this didn't do anything to you. It's just because they had one figure in the table that measured negative 20 degrees Celsius in temperature, right? And it was supposed to be aligned with zero, um, 0 as the time. All right, so at 0 minutes, it should be negative 20 degrees. So you put a point there. Now, the only thing for me that I think might confuse some students is where the actual numbers are for the time, because on this, it has every 2 centimeters equaling 5 minutes. But in your table, you have numbers such as in your table, you have numbers such as 2, 6, 10, 14, 18, 22, a lot of even numbers. While it's not going up by an even number, it's going up by an odd number. So you'd have to interpret where those figures would fall. So this would be the general shape of your graph. So if you didn't do something like this, you might have lost points, right? But I think you would have prepared well. And then for the second part of the question, and remember, it asks you to connect all the dots or the points. So hopefully everybody connected the points. It says, using the graph drawn, determine the time at which the temperature of the water was 70 degrees Celsius. Remember, in previous videos, I showed you how to find that information from your graph. If it gives you one piece of the data, you're going to, after you would have made your line, you're going to draw a dotted line up, and wherever it touches that line that you would have made, you bring it across to see the matching value. So at 70 degrees, when we made that line, we came across, it touched it here, and we realized that the time would be 20 minutes. So at 20 minutes, temperature would be at 70 degrees Celsius. So hopefully 70 was your answer. All right, 20 minutes was your answer. Now it says in the next part, in another experiment, heat was applied to ice, and then the container was covered for a few seconds. When the lid of the container was removed, water started to drip from it. Explain why there was water on the lid of the container. So our answer would be that the heat applied to the ice caused water vapor or steam to form, and by covering with the lid, the steam is cooled and returned to the liquid form water. So this is caused by condensation. So once you mention steam or water vapor, and then it cools to become liquid and caused by condensation, then you should get your 3 marks. Hopefully this question was not too difficult for you. All right, and that was our graph question. The 10 marks for the graph and those 5 marks. So let's look at this question. I was wondering if a lot of students actually studied this, but let's see. It's very easy. However, if you are not familiar, then it can pose a challenge for you. So figure 2 shows 2 classes of levers, levers X and lever Y. One of the levers has a mechanical advantage of 200 and the other lever has a mechanical advantage of 10. It says outline why lever Y would most likely be the lever that has a mechanical advantage of 200. So the answer is lever Y has the effort arm much longer than the load arm, right? Which could cause a greater mechanical advantage. So it's farther away from the fulcrum than the load, right? The next part of the question asks us in part 2, using the formula mechanical advantage equals load divided by effort, calculate the mechanical advantage to lift a load of 3,000 newtons when an effort of 300 newtons is required. So people, they would have given you the formula, they would have given you the figure. So all you have to do is follow. So you would get 1 mark for calculating and also another mark if you left the 10 unitless, because remember, mechanical advantage has no units. All right, so the answer would be 3,000 divided by 300, which would equal 10, just plain 10. Part 3 says using the formula work done equal force times distance, calculate the work done by the lever to move the 3,000 load to a distance of 0.1 meters. Same thing applies. Use the formula. So load is 3,000 newtons and it says times distance. would be the 0.1, which would be equal to 300, and the unit would be the Newton meter or the joule. So 1 mark for the answer, but also another mark for the unit, and that would give you your 25 marks for the first question. I think even if you have not studied, for those persons who would have said maybe their teacher was just not there with them, I think out of those 25 marks, you would still be able to score at least a 14 or 15 marks out of the 25. And I think that would be at low balling. But most persons should have done well on the first question. All right. Part two, it says figure, and by now some of the things should be coming back to you. All right. Part two, or number two, figure 3 shows a diagram of a shoulder joint, right? And it says name the type of joint shown in figure 3. Now, if you don't know anything about joints and only one joint can come back to your mind, this would be the joint. It is a ball and socket, right? And it says name one type of joint that can be found in the body other than the one shown. So you could have hinge joint, pivot joint, or gliding joint, right? Part 3 says identify the structures labeled X and Y. Now, X right there would be cartilage, which is found right there between the bone, and Y would be either the bone or the humerus, because that is the actual name of the bone there. But could be humerus or bone, should give you your 2 marks. It says other than movement, state one function of each of the structures labeled X and Y. So cartilage and the humerus. So for X, the cartilage, it helps to cushion the bone so it doesn't rub against other bones, and it also helps to reduce friction. And Y is there for support and structure. And also another function that just popped into my head, because the humerus is a long bone, you could have the production of red blood cells and you would get your 1 mark. So that's 2 marks. The next part of the question asks us to compare the movement of the shoulder joint with that of the elbow joint. The answer would be the shoulder joint has a greater range of motion, which is multidirectional, compared to the elbow joint, which works in only one plane. That's 3 marks. It says Bruce required surgery and was sent for a blood test. The results indicated that his blood only contains anti-A antibodies. Identify Bruce's blood type based on the results of the blood test. His blood type would be B. And it says list 2 other blood types in humans. You could have A, AB, or O. It says explain why only certain types of blood would be compatible with Bruce's blood type. Your response must include one blood type that would be compatible with Bruce's blood type. So it would be that Bruce would only be able to receive blood that is compatible to his, and those would be blood types that have B antigens and lack A antigens, which would match his A antibodies, blood types such as O and B. Now, people, this may sound foreign to you, but you have to go and do transport to really understand the whole concept of blood types, what makes a blood type, right? It all comes down to the presence of the specific type of antigen and antibody in the plasma. All right. So if this is something that you were just not familiar with, no problem. I think out of your common knowledge, you could identify 2 blood types in humans, right? And so you would not be a loss. You would have gotten those 2 marks. All right. So don't worry. This question 3, starts with write the word equation for photosynthesis. Now, students, I am sure you're almost sick of this equation, because photosynthesis is something that you've been learning from the beginning of time, right? And they're not even asking for the chemical equation at this point. I believe that they were trying to give you guys as much chance to score a high grade on this paper. Write word equation for photosynthesis. We remember it. Water plus carbon dioxide, sunlight over chlorophyll gives you glucose and oxygen. Two easy marks. It says organisms rely directly or indirectly on plants for food. Figure 4 shows a diagram of a food chain. Circle the producer in figure 4 below. And people, come on, what is the producer here? If you say that the plant is the producer, then that would be the answer, right? The plant is the producer. That's 1 mark. All right. Hopefully we read that question correctly. I left it on purpose just to do that in the video, but hopefully you read the question, so you would have gotten that 1 mark. All right. Now it says explain the possible impact on the lizard if there was a drought. Now, this could be, if I think, if you would have been so desperate, right? You could say that the lizard doesn't get any water to drink because of the drought and he would die of dehydration. I think CXC would have to give you the mark because that is a possible impact on the lizard if there was a drought. It doesn't mention anything linking back to the plant or the grasshopper. So if you just said that the lizard wouldn't have any water to drink and died as a result, I think that would be worthy of marks, right? But CXC has the mark scheme and we are yet to see that. So let us see. And I would say no, because maybe they're looking for a more deeper explanation, right? Because the plants need water to grow and survive. If there is a lack of water, the plants would die. And then the grasshopper that feeds on the plant would die. And then the lizard that feeds on the grasshopper would probably die of starvation as well. So the drought affects the plant, which in turn affects the grasshopper, which in turn affects the lizard because they are dependent on each other for food. But ultimately, I believe if you said lack of water causes lizard to die, you're not wrong. You're 100% right. All right. Let us look at B. It says Mary decided to start a kitchen garden, but realized that her plants were not developing like the ones in her neighbor's garden, even though her plants were being watered often. Figure 5 shows the results of a soil profile test that Mary conducted with samples of soil from her garden and from 2 of her neighbors. The results of the soil test revealed that the soil in Mary's garden is sandy soil. So they gave us 3 soil samples, soil X, Y, and Z, and asked which of the soil types would have been sandy, and the answer is X. And it says state 2 characteristics of sandy soil. Sandy soil has large particle size. It has poor water retention and fast drainage. And that's 2 marks. And I would have just given you an extra one. Part 3 says explain how the results of the test help to explain the challenge with the development of the plants in Mary's garden. So basically, why is the sandy soil affecting her plants? So because the sandy soil drains too quickly, it prevents the plants from absorbing sufficient water and nutrients, and this is the reason why her plants are not developing properly. So that's 3 marks. It says Mary decided to use hydroponics as a second method of crop cultivation. List 3 advantages of hydroponics. And for those who don't know, hydroponics is the method of cultivating crops without the use of soil, but it uses nutrient-rich medium. Most of the time, it's water. So water conservation is a benefit. Uses less space and it reduces pesticide and herbicide use. And that would be 3 marks. And that's a 15-mark question. You're coming down nicely. We are at question 4. It says figure 6 shows an image of a cyclone. I should have left this one out as well. It says list 3 conditions necessary for cyclone development. 1, and cyclone, people, is just another name for a hurricane. Right? Cyclone usually develops on the eastern hemisphere of the earth, and a hurricane is developed on the western side, if my memory serves me right. So cyclone and hurricane, same thing, but it just depends on where it develops. So the cyclone and the hurricane, same thing, just different names. Right? So this is the image of a hurricane. List 3 conditions necessary for cyclone development. You need warm ocean water, moist air, and low pressure. 3 marks. It says on figure 6, circle the area of the cyclone that represents the eye, and I would have circled it for you. And I believe, even if you don't know anything about hurricanes, whatever part looks like the eye, I would circle it, and that would give me 1 mark. All right, people. So when we look at, I think there are a lot of giveaway marks on this paper. Part B says the air surrounding the Earth organizes into bodies or areas called air masses. State one characteristic of the maritime tropical air mass, and one characteristic is that it is warm and moist. Part 2 says name 2 types of air masses other than the maritime tropical air mass, and fronts and masses. It's been a long time I haven't seen these on papers. So, guys, I guess that maybe they're taking some questions from the back of the paper. Name 2 types of air masses other than the maritime tropical air mass. You have the continental polar, maritime polar, the maritime Arctic, and the continental Arctic. 2 marks. It says figure 7 shows a diagram of a front. It says define the term front. A front is a boundary separating 2 air masses with different temperatures, leading to weather changes. So in the Caribbean, we always say, "Oh, a cold front is coming," but we do have warm fronts as well. It says draw an arrow on the diagram in figure 7 to show the direction in which the front is moving. Now, the arrow is here, right? And the arrow would be shown the direction of which the front is moving. It is moving towards the warm air, right? So that is where it would be drawn. And then it says name the type of front formed in figure 7, and you must give a reason for your answer. And the answer would be it's a cold front because cold air is advancing while warm air is receding. So whichever air mass is advancing, that would give the name for the type of front. It says discuss what would happen when the 2 air masses meet. So I have, if cold air approaches a warm air mass, the cold air will wedge under and push the warm air upwards because the cold air is denser. And as the warm air rises, it will form clouds. And when the warm air forms clouds, we have a lot of precipitation or rainfall or snow, which is often produced. So that's what happens. The cold air pushes the warm air up and causes us to have a lot of cloud formation, causing a lot of rain formation. All right, maybe that one was a little bit tricky because it's at the back of the syllabus. And if at this point, because we're at question 5, you have not subscribed, shared the link, or commented, then I'm going to ask that you do so because it encourages me to continue making these videos for you as you prepare for your exam. It says, define the term immunity. Immunity is the ability of an organism to resist an infection. Part 2, name 2 types of immunity. You have natural immunity and artificial immunity, or active immunity and passive immunity. I'm not sure which one CSEC would be looking for, if it's active or passive, or natural or artificial, because you have artificial passive and artificial active, and you also have natural active and natural passive. So I believe it's natural and artificial. However, I'm not sure what they would be looking for. All right, because natural would be the body's own way of making the antibody, while artificial immunity would be some form of vaccine. So I'm wondering if those are the 2 that they are looking for, or active or passive. So worldwide, more than 1 million persons contract sexually transmitted infections every day. State whether each of the following sexually transmitted infections is viral, meaning caused by a virus, or fungal, caused by a fungus. We have herpes and hepatitis B, and both of them are viral. So even if you are guessing, you must have gotten one right. Part 2, state one sign or symptom of each of the following sexually transmitted infection. So for herpes, you have blisters or sores around the genitals. And for hepatitis B, you have jaundice, all right? And jaundice is when you have that yellowing of the eyes and the palms of your hand. Part 3 says name one form of contraceptive that can be used to prevent the transmission of sexually transmitted infections, and that would be the condom or the barrier method. All right, and that would be 1 mark. It says an expectant mother did not seek medical care for the first 6 months of her second pregnancy. In her first pregnancy, it was discovered that the mother was Rh negative or rhesus negative, and the fetus was Rh positive. At a medical appointment at 6 months into her second pregnancy, the doctor expressed concern for the fetus as it was discovered that the fetus is Rh positive. It says explain why the doctors would be concerned about the fetus being Rh positive, given that the mother did not seek early prenatal care. So when a baby is Rh positive and the mother is Rh negative with no prenatal care, the mother's immune system can create antibodies against the Rh positive blood cells of the baby. These antibodies can cross the placenta during subsequent pregnancies and attack the baby's red blood cells, leading to a condition called Rh disease. So it could cause uh, a spontaneous abortion as well. The baby could die. And, this is why it is so important for expectant mothers as soon as they find out that they are pregnant or expecting, they make an appointment for the doctor, especially if it is a second pregnancy, because most of the time this is when we see the Rh factor coming in during the second pregnancy. All right, but it must be noted that once you find yourself pregnant, it is important to visit the doctor immediately. All right, so it says list 4 other likely consequences of the mother not receiving medical care for the first 6 months, and these could be anything that you think could go wrong, in my opinion, because you have a high risk of preterm birth, so you would have a preemie baby, right? There would be an increased risk of low birth weight. There would be long-term health issues, and even the risk of the baby dying, increased risk of mortality. So that would be 4 marks, and that's your 15-mark question. And let's look at the final question, question 6. It says state the meaning of the abbreviation CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. And I guess a lot of persons did not familiarize themselves with this, but if you had seen the Human and Social Biology paper that was done a few days, I think it was the day before this paper, they actually had a similar question on the paper about cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR. So it begs me to wonder every year if HSB comes before integrated science. Always try and access the paper a little bit before to see if there are any topics there that might come on our integrated science paper. So it seems we're gonna have to use our intuition, because I looked at it, I saw the paper, and I said, I wonder if they would put CPR on the paper, and so said, so done. So it says list 3 steps involved in performing CPR. Steps 1 to 4. Call 911 or ask someone else to. And I think our common knowledge of seeing CPR done in like movies or maybe even around us, or we have some experience with someone we know doing CPR, right? Or even if you are someone who's trained, I know in the cadets they should teach you first aid. So if there are any persons here who have done the cadets, then this should be taught to you. So it's calling 911 or asking someone else to, right, or your emergency number to lay the person on the back and open their airway. 3, checking for breathing. And 4, perform the chest compressions that you always see them doing. And maybe if you say pumping the chest, maybe you get it right. And if you said any of these, right, and it didn't ask for them in the correct order, it asked for 3, and I gave you 4. So that would give you your 3 marks. It says outline 2 precautions that should be taken when administering CPR. So 1, you should assess the scene. So before approaching the person, ensure that the scene is safe for you and the person needing help. Look for any hazards or potential risks. So if the person would have collapsed perhaps close to electrical wires, or maybe there is some other danger, assess the scene. So that's a precaution too. When you're calling for help, call if you're alone, call for help. Put the phone on loudspeaker so that they can guide you. Another one is check responsiveness. So gently shake the person, shout to see if they are responding to you, because it could be something else. Maybe they don't need CPR, but you still have to check to see if they're conscious, right? So those are just some precautions, general precautions, and that would have been for 4 marks, and they only asked for 2, and I gave you 3. And again, I think common knowledge. And then this question is one I think almost all teachers would have done right throughout the Caribbean with their students. The one with the exercise and the heart rate before and after exercise. And this is how I know CSEC was really, really trying to help you students, because out of all of the questions from the experiments that you'd have done, I think this one is what was used right across the Caribbean. So it says table 2 shows the heart rate of 3 persons before exercise and 1 minute after exercise. Each person completed the exercise activities at different intensities. So it says identify which participant performed exercise at the lowest intensity and provide a reason. Now, just by looking at the table, guys, it says the lowest intensity. And the word lowest there should be a hint for you. And if you had person A, then that would have been your 1 mark. And it asks you for a reason. And it would be because they had the smallest increase in their heart rate after exercise. So less exercise, you'll have a lower response, right? So 2 marks, simple. It says there one conclusion which can be made from the data in table 2. It says exercise increases the heart rate. The more intense the exercise, the greater the increase in the heart rate. And we could see that, not true. 85, 105, 108. We saw a steady increase. And that was 1 mark. Part 3, it says list 4 possible benefits of exercise based on your conclusion. So if it's based on your conclusion that it increases your heart rate, right, we must look at the circulation benefits. So 1, you would have improved cardiovascular health due to enhanced circulation. 2, lowered blood pressure. 3, stronger heart or cardiac muscle. And 4, it lowers the risk of heart disease. And that is the end of the May-June 2025 integrated science paper. If you think you would have scored well on this exam, well, give yourself a pat on the back, because I think this paper was a giveaway. If you had a lot of struggles with the paper, don't fret, you still have paper 1. Or if you are studying for your exam, remember these are topics to walk away with. So go with God and study. Remember, this is Past Papers 101 with Miss Edwards, where we believe all results with God can be distinctions.